What's up, everybody? This is the Digital Academy and the Punk Rock Poetry Podcast with Conscience and Professor Mike going through a discussion that I don't even know what it's about yet. I don't even know what we're talking about. It's one of his old, what is it, a lecture or a presentation?
Yeah,
I guess that's what you call it.
Kind of getting ready for next fall. I'm retiring a few presentations, so I thought it'd be a cool way to kind of give them one last hurrah, is present them to you and have you ask
And let
questions.
the whole world see them, man.
Kind of mimic a little bit of what a classroom scenario is like, right?
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So I'm the student. You are the professor. Let's do it. I don't even know what we're talking about. I showed up to class and I probably got drunk last night and wasn't prepared for school. I'm just showing up to a lecture and I don't even know what it's about. So here we go. I'm a fresh student, fresh off the street.
That's fine.
I see a pink elephant.
As long as you come with the right attitude and ready to listen, and
That's right.
you got a piece of paper and a pen. So what do
I
you
don't
see
got a
there?
piece of paper and a pen, but I got
Whatever,
my mind.
man. Not in this format.
Yeah.
In class. So what do you see there?
I see a pink elephant roped to a peg in the ground.
Right. So when elephants are, I usually start off with this like little bit of a story here. I talk about how to break an elephant, what you do is you start when it's really young, and when it's really small and weak, you attach its leg with a steel chain to a steel pole that it actually can't get away from, so that it actually literally couldn't pull itself away. And then as it gets bigger, it actually learns that it can't pull itself away. So as it gets bigger, you can reduce the strength of the thing holding it to eventually, by the time it's a full-size elephant, it's being held by just that rope to a stake. That's like a massive, massive beast that could easily rip its leg away.
Right.
But it's learned that it can't. So it's a psychological break. It's not a physical strength thing. And this is learned and conditioned in the animal right from the beginning.
Yeah, part of the training.
It's the breaking.
Why necessarily are they trying to break it?
So that it'll do tricks and it'll do what it wants. It's like even breaking a horse.
But what traditionally is an elephant used for in the workforce? Like in let's say smaller African countries, what does the elephant do? Pull weight?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
That's what they use them for? Pulling weight?
Well, that's not even mentioned in war elephants. Elephants have an interesting history especially in like Carthage, if you're talking about like northern Africa, and their fights against like what are called the Punic Wars. So yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, Carthage in Greece. Anyways, where you see like Hannibal riding the elephants over the Alps. But so the point here is that the only reason that thing is holding it is because the elephant thinks that it can't get away.
Right. Although
it's learned that it's helpless.
Yeah. And obviously become at peace in some ways with it.
Submitted to it.
Yeah, submitted to it.
So I want to present you with this concept. Okay, so the reason I told that story, and usually I have like a written thing that I read and I go more into the steps of how you actually break the psychology of an elephant. But I'm eventually getting to this idea of learned helplessness. Okay, so the elephant has learned it's helpless. Learned helplessness is a behavior typical of an organism, human or animal, that's endured repeated, painful, or otherwise negative stimuli, which it was unable to escape or avoid. Okay, so this thing has experienced a trauma. So I'm going to be making the link to human depression and human psychological distress in a moment, right? We're just starting with an animal example. So the animal's learned that it can't perform, that it can't do anything to change its situation.
Insane.
Okay, eventually the animal stops trying to even avoid the stimulus, right?
It becomes so used to it that it probably doesn't even think of what would be able to happen had it not been the circumstance.
Right.
You know, it probably stops thinking about trying to get away from that rope that's tied to a peg. Eventually, you could probably have a fishing line with a nail in the ground and it would still stay.
Yep. Eventually, it's the symbol of the rope that's holding them more
Right.
than anything physical, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's kind of, you said it right though. The way that you said it shows you know what it means. So check out the image there. So for anyone listening to the podcast, it's the same pink elephant. And if you're my student, you've definitely seen this picture. But the caption says the elephant is held back not by the puny rope, but by its belief systems. Belief system. Are you? Right? Are we sometimes held back by our thought, our belief systems?
This goes into talking about what we were talking about last week about being or maybe it wasn't with you, maybe it was with someone else, but how we are afraid to reach our most, what's the word I'm looking for?
Our highest potential? No,
Our
that was
highest
one.
potential. That's it. We're afraid to reach our highest potential. We're scared of it.
That was one of the videos me and you did together, but didn't work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was that
Stuck in
Maslow video.
that part stuck in my head. How we're afraid to reach our true potential. That's right.
Yep. I'm gonna still do a video about that because that's an awesome video.
Yeah.
So I'm for the people on the podcast. I'll just keep.
Yeah.
I'll stop
What is
saying that,
those?
but I'm gonna keep reading the slides. Go ahead.
What is that? What is that YouTube channel with those videos that we watch on it? What's it called again?
After school.
After school.
After school with
With a
school.
K.
Yeah, school spelled SKOOL.
I
That's like
wonder
one
why
of my
they decided
favorite
to
little
do that.
channels. Probably just to make it unique.
Probably so, just for search engines.
Yeah, so eventually the animal will stop to try to avoid the stimulus and behave as if it's utterly helpless to change the situation, even when opportunities to escape are presented. So this is an important point, that not only does it's like you said, it stops thinking about it, but not only that, it
It's
stops.
received comfort. It's received comfort from the jail sentence. Almost that it's comfortable to be not away from its stick. You know, it becomes home. It's its home. So presented ways to get away from it, it decides not to because it doesn't want to leave its home. I mean, it becomes comfortable with trauma. It's crazy.
Yeah. And with an animal, we would just call that being broken,
Broken. So
which
that is
is
the idea of broken.
sort of, I guess, right? It's you're not trying to destroy the animal, but you're trying to tame an instinct out of it.
Yeah.
Because an elephant's not instinctively gonna bow to us, right?
Right.
Instinctively in the wild, if we were crossing paths with an elephant, it would destroy us.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a horse. You have to teach it to let you on its back, because it's, for all its evolution, its big threat has been the big
Wild
cats
fucking
jumping
animal,
on
man.
it. Yeah, exactly. So it's instinctively wants to buck you off of it.
Right.
Yeah, man. So it's a kind of interesting concept, right? Learned helplessness, that an animal or us, we can learn that we can. It's almost like a negative thinking gets to such a point that it actually makes us perform lower than we could, because it's almost this like self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Well, a lot of it is never experiencing any type of potential too, which would limit your conceived possibility of potential that you have.
Yeah, definitely. Restrict your worldview, sort of, right?
Yeah,
Of
restricts it and restricts your bubble, like makes your bubble much smaller, so small. Like the elephant's bubble is tiny in that situation. When are elephants like roaming herds? Do they go and do they travel a lot? I'm sure they do. They probably just walk through the woods. They have so much shit they got to eat. They got to move around.
Yeah, they're hardcore social animals. They
Yeah.
move in huge packs, I guess, herds.
Herds.
Yeah.
I wonder how many elephants are in an elephant herd. Typically.
I don't know. That's a question my daughter Evelyn would love right now. She's all about animal
She's
facts.
all over elephants.
She might know that, man.
Oh yeah. Ask her tomorrow when she wakes up.
Elephants is one of the animals she likes. I think they might be. Anyways, let's keep going with this for a sec, because
Yeah.
um, if you think about this, the idea here is that there's uncontrollable bad events. So now this can be, again, I'm kind of coming at this topic from the side, so it's a little less aggressive, because this could obviously be human trauma too. Uncontrollable bad events, perceived lack of control. So the person starts to believe they can't control the situation, and that sense of lack of control. See, the next part says a generalized helpless behavior. So then
Defeat.
the defeat mindset gets generalized, meaning it gets spread across everything.
Right.
Right. So now not
Defeat in
only,
all senses. In all senses.
yeah, that so something bad happens, it creates this perceived lack of control, and then that perceived lack of control kind of spreads out over everything.
Generalized.
A generalized, yeah, versus specific. It's like generalized just as the opposite of specific.
Right. So
Yeah, it's interesting.
helplessness in every aspect of life.
Mm-hmm.
Every aspect of thinking, every behavior, everything you do, think, see, smell, taste, everything is helpless to a
Yeah,
certain
we're
degree.
doing the bad part first, then we're going to do the good part, because I'm going to talk about the flip of this, which is learned optimism and a thing called positive psychology. So
So
this
that's where we're getting in part 2 if we don't finish this.
no, we're finishing this, man. We're finishing this. What, are you bowing out already, man? We're only
No,
like,
no. It's
okay,
interesting stuff.
yeah, it's only like 14 minutes in. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's keep going, buddy.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. I'm just thinking if it's 25 slides, what are we on? 5 slides now?
No, we're probably close to 10.
Really?
Yeah, give me another 15 minutes. Okay, so
Okay.
interesting statistics. So sorry, this is kind of prepared to be obviously like an in-class presentation, right? But
Of course,
I
yeah.
think it's kind of interesting that, let me move this guy, that approximately 8% of adults will experience major depression at some point in their life. So I'm making the argument of why does this topic matter? Anxiety disorders currently affect roughly 5% of the population, causing mild to severe impairments. These are stats I got from the CMHA, Canadian Mental Health Association. 20% of Canadians will personally experience a mental illness in their lifetime. Almost one half of those who feel they've suffered from depression or anxiety have never gone for help.
Mm-hmm.
That's a super important statistic, especially
Yeah.
men, right?
Huge. Men don't do it. And I'll tell
So,
you, it's the best thing I ever did. Best thing I ever did. So if you have depression, go to a doctor, tell him that you're depressed, see what he says or she says. For
yep,
sure.
yep. Go to your personal doctor.
Go to your GP, get a referral if you need it, if they can't help you, but odds are they'll be able to send you in the right direction just to begin with.
Yep, or go to your school.
GPs are trained highly, especially in things like anxiety and depression because they're so prevalent, right? So GPs have a lot of experience with how to deal with certain situations. And leastly, if it, like all but not least, they can send you in the right direction and they can send you to somebody who really knows what they're talking about, especially like PTSD, depression, so common, right?
Yep, definitely, man. Well said.
Like think about that. 8% of adults will experience major depression. And major depression means like cyclical depression, right? Like 3 weeks of depression in a row with the feelings present every day. Major depression, 3 weeks. 3 weeks is a typical cycle for a major depressive episode, followed by manic episodes, and they can last for another 3 weeks, right? So it's never having any comfort. Think about that. 8% of adults. That's a lot of people, man. We're talking like 3 million people in Canada. That's crazy. 4 million.
It's a lot, man.
Yeah, it's very, very, very prevalent.
So some of what you said there is the bipolar part too. I think that those stats would be interesting to look at too. Yeah, but you said a bunch of interesting things there that we could do follow-up stuff on, like PTSD and then bipolar and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to show you this. So this is an experiment, and I'll show you this as an image because you can find footage on this, but it's brutal. So this is Seligman and Mayer. This is actually an earlier experiment, but basically they were giving dogs a shock so that there's a shock mat, and they give the dog a shock. Eventually the dog learns it can't get away, right? So you have two groups of dogs. One group, because all these experiments or whatever, anytime you see it presented like something like this, there's always a lot of the dogs or a lot of the birds, or like it's never like Pavlov's dog was like tons of dogs.
Yeah, man. I
But
gotta say, it kind of makes me sad.
yeah,
Poor
no,
fuck.
and the reason I'm including this is for I think it has value, right? So
Right.
not just to be, um,
Let's shock the
un,
dogs.
yeah, not to be unnecessarily brutal. What happens is, so you pre-shock these dogs in a situation where they can't get away. They can't get over this fence. There's no way to get away from the shock. Then you take another group of dogs. You don't give them that precondition. So you have these two groups of dogs. One group of dog that's been traumatized in a learned helplessness way. One group of dogs that hasn't. Then you put them in this new situation where they get shocked and they can get away. And what you find is the dogs that had been pre-traumatized just lay down and take it, where the
Right.
dogs that haven't been traumatized fight and get out.
Crazy.
Crazy,
Crazy.
right?
Crazy. They just admit defeat right away. They're so used to it.
Well, and
Poor
see
things,
how,
man.
yeah,
Makes me
sorry.
sad.
Yep.
I just think about my poor little dogs getting shocked all day. Fuck.
No, I know, but yeah,
I get what
there's
you're
this
saying
kind of
though.
sad history of animals in psychology for sure. Some of
And
my
but
students
this
would
applies to
agree with you.
humans too. This learned helplessness applies to humans too. Humans are getting shocked too, just in different ways, man. And in a multitude of ways, people are suffering. Think
Like, what?
about it.
Keep going on that, man. You should go on that for a bit because that's a good point.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, every single thing that is negative in our life is trauma. And if there's something negative that is happening persistently, you get used to it and you learn your helplessness around that topic. Like, let's say you got a husband and you're a wife and or a husband who has a wife who's cheating on you regularly. You know, even when you don't find them, you know what's going on because you've realized a pattern that exists and you just take it. Some people just take it. Or work. Your boss, you're a girl and your boss flirts with you repeatedly over and over and over again, nonchalantly, really, really subtly. And that over time, that's trauma. It's trauma. Like all the negative things that we're getting shocked in various ways all the time is what I'm saying. So learned helplessness can be very prevalent in humanity as well. I feel bad for these dogs, but then it transpose that suffering into a human condition and you start to realize that we should be much sadder than we actually are because this kind of shit is happening every day to people, to humans. You know what I mean?
Well said, man. Well said.
Thanks.
And I think within that comment, you kind of captured the rationale for doing something like this is that because of its direct importance to understanding human depression. Like
Right.
this wasn't a sadistic experiment, even though there's ethical critiques you could have of it.
Of course, of course.
This would have been a, you know, like Sligman and Mayer. These are very legitimate psychologists. So
Right.
this is looking at how helplessness is learned. In Sligman's study of learned helplessness, dogs were placed in a two-sided box. Dogs that had no prior experience with being unable to escape a shock would quickly jump over a hurdle in the center of a box to land on the safe side. Dogs that had previously learned that escape was impossible would stay on one side of the box in which the shock occurred, not even trying to get over the hurdle.
Crazy.
That's a pretty good picture, eh?
Yeah, no doubt. What's with the speakers? What do they do? Is there noise involved in this test as well? You
I
see
don't
the
know.
speakers in the picture?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure
It's a
either.
good question, man.
What are
I
the
wonder if
speakers?
the question, maybe the speakers, maybe it's like a little bit of that, like the speakers make a sound when the shock's coming. That
Yeah,
would make sense,
so it's
actually.
hitting more senses and
Well, that it's a,
causing more trauma. My God, these poor dogs.
well, causing the association, right?
Yeah.
So that now the dogs that haven't had the trauma, once that sound comes, they get out.
But imagine if it was like a human saying commands to like remote control helplessness. Imagine they were associating the shocks with commands from human voices.
Yeah.
Like that's some next level shit right there.
Well, Pavlov, well, you can basically associate anything with anything.
Like, exactly. Like let's just say that they're in. Let's just talk about noises. that we
Yeah.
hear that can target our helplessness.
Man, if
There's
I
noise
was,
as a trigger.
this is
There's stimulus that
yeah, man.
triggers helplessness. So they were working on more than one sense here. They were working on pain and sound. I wish they talked more about the sound.
I don't think that's, yeah, I think at most it was part of the trigger.
Right.
The main thing here is the shock. But yeah, you bring up an interesting point. It's a sensory overload situation.
Yeah, overload. Absolute overload. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to read this
Who
real
knows?
quick.
It might have been really stinky in there too. They might have put a whole bunch of bad smells inside that little box too. These poor dogs. I can't say it enough. These poor dogs. They're smelling a whole bunch of bad things. They're hearing
Man,
bad things. They're getting shocked.
Okay, listeners at home, Wilkie's adding aspects to the experiment. Okay. The impact of learned helplessness has been demonstrated in a number of different animal species, but its effect can also be seen in people. Consider the often used example: a child who performs poorly on math tests and assignments and then quickly begins to feel that nothing they do will have any effect on their performance. Right? So they just start to think that they just suck at math. Later,
Right.
when faced with any type of math-related task, they experience a sense of helplessness.
Right.
Right? So it
I had
translates
that,
into,
man, with my
I had
last
that with
year of
math too,
chemistry.
man.
I didn't really have it with math because I only took math till grade 12, right? I didn't take any OAC maths, but I took OAC chemistry. And I actually had to drop out because it was just so fucking hard. Now, this was also post car accidents. My brain wasn't working properly as it was, but I just could not get the nomenclature of organic chemistry. I just could not get it, man. I could not comprehend how to do it. And I sensed
Nomenclature's
I
tough.
had helplessness. I had helplessness in chemistry, so much so that I had to go to a guidance counselor and drop out of the goddamn course, man. So I get that. I feel that. That's real right there.
Yeah, and so what this is saying is now in the future when you get pressed
Chemistry.
with when you get nomenclature related tasks. Just joking, man. Luckily there's not too many of those, man.
No, there's not too many of those. Unless you're a chemist, they don't really come up.
Yeah.
Thank God. But math comes up all the time.
So learned helplessness is also associated with almost everything, right? So the problem with learned helplessness is it's actually just kind of a name for something. It's not really like a different thing. It's not like, it's like saying, it's just kind of a way of thinking that's associated with things like depression, anxiety, phobias, shyness, loneliness. Those are all things that can be exacerbated or can be made worse by learned helplessness.
Right. You got any phobias? You got any phobias?
No, not really.
Sharks, man. I'm fucking terrified of sharks.
I always use the shark example in class, right? Because it's a great example to explain phobias. So if you're swimming in a body of water that could potentially have sharks and you're afraid, that's not really a phobia. If you're walking down the halls at the college,
I'm afraid that sharks are going to come walking onto land and kill me.
Okay, so that's the irrationalness of that is the marker we're looking for.
Yeah, okay. I gotcha. So you have no phobias. You have zero phobias, like even in the slightest sense.
In the slightest sense, that wouldn't be a phobia.
To phobias as like a disorder because you're so scared of them.
So a phobia, I think two important things about that word. This is the problem. Not the problem, but one of the complications of words like this that have kind of a common word
and a slang.
Kind of a slang, right? But a phobia kind of implies that it's irrational and that it's inhibiting. So it's like if you're afraid of meteorites, but you never think about meteorites and you still live your life and you're totally productive, it's not really like a clinically relevant phobia.
So if I'm afraid that when I'm walking through the fish aisle at the grocery store, the fish are going to become alive and turn into sharks and eat me, that would be a phobia?
That'll be a whole bunch of stuff, man. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. I guess. I don't know. Am I supposed to answer that seriously?
It's irrational, right?
Yeah, that's insane.
One of those ones where if you're a psychiatrist or a psychologist and you're interviewing somebody, you make sure that you're sitting behind them so they can't see a reaction of what you just said.
Reminds me of Dave Chappelle. Whatever happened to
Oh.
crazy? No, I'm just joking. But yeah, I don't know, man, what to tell you. But learned helplessness is this image here of this wall, right? And it's like this wall that the pot of gold's on the other side. If we could just like master, whatever our obstacle is.
Learn how to walk around the wall.
Okay, so let me tell you about this. So Martin Seligman, mentioned him before, the same guy that did the other experiment, but he was looking at this idea, how to change
Oh,
your
you're
mind
kind
in
of
your life.
freezing on me a little bit.
Okay, I think it's fine, man.
I can't hear you right now.
All right, guys, we're going to stop it here because apparently Will can't hear anymore. And we'll pick it up next time. Cheers. Hope you have a good day. Kind of is a nice break anyways, because now I'm done the part on learned helplessness. We can talk about learned optimism next time and kind of the flip of this and how to take, how to spin that, how to put it in reverse, how to increase engagement, increase meaning, increase positive emotion, challenge those negative thoughts, play to your strengths, count your blessings, seek meaning, strategies for action. We'll be back next week. Digital Academy. Cheers. And that didn't stop recording.